All right, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us for another edition of the Moving Beyond the Coronavirus Economy series. My name is Tom DuFore. I'm the CEO with Big Sky Franchise Team. And thank you for tuning in. We had some slight technical difficulties, as might happen when you have a live show. We had just some technical difficulties. For whatever reason, the audio is or the microphone for pickup, for whatever reason, is not picking up the studio mic here. So we'll do the best that we can to try to make this audio selection great. But you are in luck today. We've got a ton of phenomenal information we're going to be going over today. If you're a first timer here with going over the current franchise sales and marketing trends that we're seeing occurring and happening across the country, this is a great episode that we go through a quick hit, facts, figures. We're going to use a bunch of different sources that we use to look at some macro data, some industry data, micro data. We'll be looking at macroeconomy data at large. We'll be looking at small business data. I've got a new report, by the way, today that we're going to be going over. We've never looked at this data before. It's exciting to take a look at. And then we'll dive into some franchise specific data and information. What's going on with some franchise trends? All of these things are contributing and impacting, whether we recognize it or not. These things are going to be impacting what people are maybe thinking about or talking about or wondering about. So with that being said, we generally do keep a smaller group here. So for our live show, so if you have questions, feel free to type it into the chat box. I can ask a question or raise your hand or just make some indication so that I know you'd like to speak and I can unmute you to ask a question. So with that being said, I am going to open up my screen and share it, and we'll get this show on the road. Hold on one second. It is just taking a moment for me to share this. Okay, maybe. There we go. Now it's letting me do it. Okay, here we are. All right, so the first report I always like to take a look at is the manufacturing PMI. Now, this is the Purchasing Managers Index. This comes out every month, and it shows what's been going on. I believe this report in particular has been happening since the 1980s. And it shows what is the sentiment of purchasing managers. What are they buying more raw goods to create the products that they're going to? And the reason I like the manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index is because the manufacturing tends to let us know, it tends to be a leading indicator to tell us what is likely to be occurring in maybe 6 months, a year, 18 months, 2 years down the road. And so one of the things that we can see here at 53%, I'll read this, it says manufacturing grew in June as manufacturing PMI registered 53%, 3.1 percentage points lower than the May reading of 56.1. 3 of the 5 sub-indexes that directly factor into manufacturing were in growth territory. All of the 6 biggest manufacturing industries registered moderate to strong growth in June. In this order, computer and electronic products, and it goes through the list. What I'd like to point out here is that anything above 50% generally indicates that we're in a growth territory. Anything over 50, anything below 50, we're in a contraction period. And essentially, it's more than half of the purchasing managers that are out there are actually intending to increase orders or purchase more. So it's showing growth that's occurring. Now, what we can tell since about March of 2021 is the peak out of this 3-year window we're looking at. And you can see that there's a pretty steady line that you can see here of indicating a decline in the total amount of purchases occurring. Now, we have to take into consideration that in 2020, there was probably a lot of demand that was pent up that ended up getting purchased in 2021. But we still need to pay attention to what's happening for 2021 into 2022 as we see this kind of slow decline here. So next month's going to be really critical to see, okay, are we going to see another dip? Is it going to stay flat or maybe tick back up a little bit? So we will see what ends up happening here for the upcoming months, but we'll see. It's, kind of about even is how I look at it. I don't really look at it as a great positive sign. It's not terribly negative at this point. It's hard to assess from the data. The second report here from the Institute for Supply Management is the Purchasing Managers Index for the services economy. And it says in June, services PMI registered 55.3%, a 0.6 percentage point decrease compared to the May reading of 55.9%. The 12-month average is 60.8%. Reflecting consistently strong growth in the services sector, which has expanded for 25 consecutive months. The June reading, however, set a 12-month low for a second consecutive month and is the lowest since May 2020, when the index registered 45.2%. A reading above 50% indicates services sector economy is generally expanding. Below 50% indicates the services sector is generally contracting. So good news is that we're above 50%. The not so great news is that these are the lowest readings we've had in a couple of years. So again, I don't think it causes for total alarm, but it is worth noting what's happening and going on. Maybe things are just slowing down a little bit. Again, maybe due to a wide variety of factors that we'll talk about: upcoming inflation, new war that the U.S. is, I don't know what our role technically would be considered, but the war happening in Ukraine, and factors that are contributing to it. Maybe people are slowing down. Maybe it's the summer, right? Maybe people are finally taking some pent-up vacations that are finally happening here to go start traveling again. Who knows what it could be? But it is worth noting that something it is slowing here a little bit, and it looks like it's starting to flatten out a little bit. We'll see what happens next month. Hospital PMI. So you can see here that hospitals had its 25th consecutive month of growth. Say the nation's hospital chain supply executives in the hospital ISM report on business. Hospital PMI registered 58% in June, a 1.1 percentage increase from May reading of 56.9%. Both the business activity and new orders indexes increased in June compared to May. So when we take a look at this, we can see that hospitals really dipped low into March. And we think that may have been in large part due to reduction in COVID related orders and purchases and things going on. And now things seem to be rebounding here with the hospital index. So when we look at all of these segments, when we look at manufacturing, we look at services, and we look at hospital, all three of these are huge sectors in the economy. All are still showing growth. Hospitals seem to be on a rebound, bouncing back to some really nice growth. And services and manufacturing, we need to pay attention to, kind of see what's going on. So all of that seems to be a good sign. Let's take a look here at the unemployment rate in the US. So unemployment rate is still very low. So it was the actual for June of 2022 was 3.6%. And it was 3.6% in May. It was 3.6%. So it's holding relatively steady. This is the lifetime max of this chart. This is from tradingeconomics.com, their chart on US unemployment rate. And you can see here the trending unemployment rate back since about 1950 all the way to the present day on the far right section of the chart. I'll zoom in a little bit here to see if that can help for you to see. Now, what does this mean for your franchisees or franchise recruitment? Well, if you're thinking about selling franchises, or you have new franchisees coming on board, things you need to be thinking about is how are you going to help your franchisees with recruitment? A tight labor market, unemployment's low. We know that people are moving from one job to the next. So we need to be thinking recruitment, and we need to be thinking as well of retaining. So recruitment and retainment of those employees. So if you're a franchisor, how are you helping your franchisees do that? What can you put in place to help support them? So be thinking about that as you're discussing that. The second chart here that we're going to take a look at is inflation, which certainly is on the top of, I think, most people's mind. It seems to be, at least in headlines, just about daily at this point. Rightfully so. I mean, inflation here is fast approaching 10%. So for the month of June, you can see it here, it was 9.1%. May was 8.6%. The forecast was 8.8%. So it's gone up even higher than what was forecast at 9.1%, which is pretty incredible to think that that kind of an inflationary rate is going. Now, to be fair, when the federal governments around the world, including the US, print a whole bunch of money and pump it into the economy, inflation is definitely going to happen. So it shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone that we're in the stage that we're at. We have very low interest rates. We had, I should say, very low interest rates. They're coming back to kind of normal where they had been for maybe the past 10 or 15 years or so. And then you have a lot of extra cash getting pumped into the economy. Certainly, so something has to happen there. I mean, there's going to be something that occurs. Now, in terms of franchise sales efforts, what this means, and I've said this the last several sessions we've had together, but the key things for you to be thinking about are reminding your franchisees, and especially prospective franchisees, if they are going to be buying something, if you're in a business that requires equipment purchases, leasehold improvements, inventory purchases, literally every day they wait right now, the cost continues to go up. The cost to borrow money is going up with the interest rates rising. The cost of just goods and services in general continues to go up. So the value of the dollar they have right now continues to go down when we think of it from a future standpoint. So how encouraging franchisees, and this is the goal of this, is not to strong arm or artificially convince a franchise prospect to buy your franchise. That's not the goal. The goal is to take that candidate that is going to buy your franchise, to encourage them to move more quickly for the sake of time, because of the way that inflation and interest rates are going up right now. So if they are going to take out loans, if they are going to have to buy inventory, paying whatever fees, hiring contractors, those costs are going up. I know I've shared this before, but I have a close friend that bought a franchise about a year ago, and the cost for construction increased by about 50% from the time they purchased until the time they were actually ready to start doing it. And they were active, they were not delaying. It was just part of the normal process. But from what they had budgeted when they purchased till the time they found the location, leased, negotiated the lease, signed it, got it moving forward, construction costs had gone up 50%. And so that was a big hit to the budget that they had planned on. So be encouraging your franchisees to do that, as well as, if you're a franchisor, maybe be thinking about encouraging your franchisees to budget on the high end of the investment range that's in your FDD that's being disclosed. So be thinking about that as you're going through it. Certainly, from a practical standpoint, if you're in a business whose costs have gone up, you've got these variable costs for supplies, equipment, inventory, maybe food costs, your cost of goods sold, all of those things are rising, or many of them are probably rising. If you have not reviewed your own pricing at your company-owned units, you should consider reviewing your pricing to make sure those margins are staying intact. If you should also consider advising your franchisees to do the same, and encourage them to be reviewing their pricing to match. And maybe you can do a test with your own company-owned units. If you're a small system, use your company-owned units to make sure that profit margin that you're trying to mix in is where you'd like for it to be. If it's not, make an adjustment and communicate to your franchisees that you made a 5% change or a 3% change or whatever that was to your prices, and encourage them to review that. And by the way, it might be a great session for you to have with your franchisees, to do a Zoom call, video call, and talk through it. Do it over the phone with them or over a Zoom call session like this. Take 30 minutes, plan it, record it, share it. So anyway, just a nice little segment for you to take a look at there and to be thinking about. Okay, This is the new report that I'm excited to share with you. This is the Small Business Index. This is for Q2. This was just released. And this is presented by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in conjunction with MetLife. And so the U.S. Chamber of Commerce releases this. And I thought that this would, I've seen this report before. I don't know why I haven't shared it with our sessions now that we are doing these regularly. But looks like we're having a slight delay on this downloading here. Let me see if I can pull up. All right, I'll just do the PDF for us here. All right, so this is the Small Business Index, as I mentioned, from the U.S. Chamber that's put out. A couple of points I want to make note of, that the MetLife and U.S. Chamber of Commerce Small Index, it rose to 66.8 from 64.1 last quarter. This score is closer to pre-pandemic index scores, but remains below the Q1 2020 finding of 71.7. So at 66.8, we're getting closer to the pre-pandemic levels during Q1 of 2020. So we've been steadily on a rise of going through that. Inflation is currently the top concern. 44% of small businesses cite inflation as the biggest challenge facing small business owners. So, we just talked about that here. Looks like maybe I zoomed in a little too much. The computer is stalling out on me here, folks. So let me see if I can go back. Here we go. All right, so we're back here. One other thing I wanted to point out is that small business owners see competition and red tape increasing. So they're seeing competition. This quarter, it's up to 39%. That levels of competition is growing versus 30% last quarter. So I think that's interesting. And 66% of small business owners report their business is in good health, good financial health. So I thought that was a really nice sentiment. So 2 out of 3 businesses. And I can share with you that in general, the sentiment that I'm hearing just through our own client base and what customers are telling us is consistent with this. The small business community is feeling very positive about where things are right now and where things are going as a whole in general. Certainly there are outliers and folks who don't think that. So anyway, I thought I would share that. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at the, I'd like to go through the Small Business Startup Sentiment Index, which is a sentiment index that's prepared by Franchise Ventures. And this was released July 12th, so 3 days ago. This just came out. And here are a couple key highlights. 74.4% of aspiring business owners. Now, these are people that are thinking about starting a business. They expect to start a business within the next 6 months. So basically, roughly 3/4 of all survey participants that are thinking about starting a business said they're planning to do it in the next 6 months. And more respondents see conditions worse for startups than better in the coming 3 months. So worse, people think it's 31.8% think it's worse for startups. Better is at 29.5% in the coming 3 months. To me, that's about a wash. So you got about roughly 31, right around 30% saying, I think it's worse for startups. You got around 30% saying, I think it's better for startups. And then you got the remaining 40% in the middle. Seems like it's somewhere in between those. So this is a couple other highlights I'd like to point out of this survey. And the reason I want to show you this, here we go. Here's the 74% plan to start in the next 6 months. 26.3% of folks are planning to start this month, 30% in the next 2 to 3 months, 18% in 4 to 6 months, 7 to 12% in the next 7 to 12 months, and then 13.5%, they don't know when. They're not sure. They're kind of kicking the tires and thinking about it. So what does this mean for you as why am I highlighting and focusing on this? Well, the primary driver for why I want to highlight this chart in particular, if you look on the far right where my cursor is, where it shows that 74.4%, it's adding up the folks that are saying they're going to start their business this month and 2 to 3 months, and 4 to 6 months. It's adding all of those together. That's important to you because that means that someone who's thinking about buying your franchise is more than likely thinking about opening up in the next 6 months, which means they're active. They're pursuing this right now. They're looking at doing it to get started soon. So keep that in mind when you're talking to someone, that if they're saying, I'm interested, I want to get this going, you can help encourage them to want to keep moving forward and understand that timing, that sense of timing when you're speaking with someone. All right, here is the biggest factor for people in terms of the biggest factor in terms of what is causing people to have concerns about starting their business, or the biggest factor in contributing to why they would or wouldn't. On the far left here, this black line is the current month. It says 75.6% of respondents said that funding or access to credit is their number one concern. Said that that's a primary concern of or factor into starting their business. So 3 out of 4 candidates coming in are concerned about funding. That means if you don't have a funding solution in place, you should be looking to get one and get that moving. If you do have a funding solution in place, make sure you're providing that to your franchisees early to help them feel more confident and comfortable about buying your franchise. If you're able to get them maybe pre-qualified with a franchise lending group you refer out, or a local bank that maybe you do business with, or another franchisee has received a loan for, work out an arrangement where you can refer people to these lenders and these lending institutions to help your franchisees out, because that can help calm the nerves if we know that 3/4 of the people interested in buying a franchise have some concern. The second highest category, and really the only two of note in my opinion here, is are the top two, because they're so much larger than the others. 75.6% are concerned about funding. 38.9% are concerned about the current economic climate. And if you notice this black line, it keeps inching up. Back here around June, looks like December or January, we had this consistent reduction in economic climate for a couple years of just consistent reduction in concerns. And it looks like that bottomed out around December, and now things are starting to climb up again at 38.9%. So that's part of the reason why I'm focusing here on the economic concerns, so that you're aware of it and can be talking about this with your prospects and with your current franchisees so that they're aware of it. Okay. Let me see. I think that was the last piece that I wanted to talk about here. These are just the cohorts by age. So, excuse me, it shows that of all the people looking to start a business right now, 22.8% are baby boomers, 41.9% are Gen Xers, 32.4% are millennials, and 2.9% are Gen Zers. So just as you're thinking about it, know that you're most likely talking to a Gen Xer or a millennial, as for people who are coming in that are interested in buying your franchise. So understand maybe there may be some generational preferences or differences that you may want to consider, and maybe your marketing messaging or communication that's being shared. All right. This is a new stat that came out July 6th. This is one of my favorite reports that Franchise Insights provides through Franchise Ventures. This came out July 6th, so just over a week ago. And it shows that the top reasons for owning a business in Q2 of 2022, why are people thinking about going into business or owning a business? Number one, far above and away, is be my own boss. 89.5%. So if we round up, that's 9 out of 10 prospects that are inquiring about your franchising are contacting you because they want to be their own boss. And so your messaging needs to reinforce that. And when you're talking to someone, Ask them, what has led you, this is just a great question, what has led you to think about becoming or being your own boss? Ask them, what has led you to want to be your own boss? And stop talking. Sometimes salespeople have a hard time with that. Stop talking. Let your candidate speak. Let them talk about it. Okay. When a candidate is maybe stalled out in the sales process, when you leave a message, send a text message, might be worthwhile to remind them to say, by the way, I know when we had spoken earlier, you had mentioned that you were really interested in being your own boss. We still believe our franchise is a great opportunity for you to do that, to become your own, to be your own boss through our franchise system. We'd love to schedule a call, or when would be a good time to schedule a call to continue the conversation? Or here are a few dates for us to schedule a call if it's maybe a text message or an email that's going out. Income potential is dropped on this list compared to the other. I just remember that. So income potential is number 2, 64.4%. So roughly about 2/3 of people are in it for income potential. But look at number 1, far above and away. Number 2 at income is 64.4%. Number 3 is lifestyle rewards at 47.4. Number 4 is side business to supplement income at 46.6%. And the 5th reason is that they are tired of climbing the corporate ladder, 33%. So if you're going to be talking to candidates, crafting some marketing messages, here are the 5 golden tickets for you to be talking about. This is what's on their mind. So if you're not discussing or talking about these in some way, shape, or form in your marketing content, you may not have to talk about all of them. It might be 1 or 2, picking 1, 2, 3 of them to talk about at a time, or crafting some messages around it. But better make sure that Be My Own Boss is on there, number 1. Income potential in franchising, certainly there are regulations around what you can say and can't say. Do you have an item 19? What does it say? And so on, right? There are some legal requirements around that you'll need to confirm and talk to your attorney about. But lifestyle rewards, if your business, what's interesting, almost half the people are interested in a side business. So can your business can it be a part-time business? Can it? I don't know that answer for you, but if it can be, maybe they can start it as a side hustle that they could work nights and weekends or part-time, and if you can't do it that way, maybe consider it, because people are thinking about it. So I love this chart, just to bring us back to some core foundational reasons and drivers. By the way, if you have franchisees in your system, this is a great reminder to remind your franchisees of why they went into business as well. For your current franchisees, you might do a highlight of these 5 in a regular blog series, 1 a month. Remember why you started your business? Because you wanted to be your own boss, and you talk about that. And then next month, in a newsletter, communication out to them. Remember, one of the reasons many of you in our franchise system wanted to go into business for yourself is you wanted to control your own income potential. Well, are you there? Have you hit that income that you were interested in? If not, what can you be doing to do it? Give us a call, or at corporate, schedule a call with your field consultant. Let's talk about how we can do that. Same thing for lifestyle rewards. Have you built the lifestyle you're looking to live? And probably for a lot of them, the answer is no. And if they say no, then you say, well, why not? What are you doing? Let's schedule a call with your field consultant to talk about getting you on a pathway to make that change, and so on. And so you can go down that and use this as a tool to help you. And then here, the final chart that I like to show is this shows you I'm going to zoom in a little bit, the most active franchise categories for prospective franchise buyers. This is the most, where the total percentage of inquiries, which category people are inquiring about over the last 90 days. So this is current data saying over the last 90 days, we'll just start at the top. Home services, 18.5% of all leads generated for franchise inquiries have been for home services brands. 16.4% of all leads generated have been for food and restaurant. 13.3% of all leads generated have been for business services. 12.2% have been for senior and healthcare, and 11.1% have been for cleaning and maintenance. So you see these top 5 are pretty far above and away standouts from the other categories. What's interesting to note is home services had consistently been over 20%, is kind of slowly coming down, and food and restaurant, which had been down close to about 10%, it had really fallen during the pandemic, is back on the rise. So if you're in one of these categories, it's important for you to take note of that. Also take note of the remaining top 10 categories: child-related, financial services, health and fitness, education, and retail. Look at retail's back. Retail is coming back into the franchise mix. So all of this to say that if you're wondering if you're in one of these categories, especially in those top 5, know that people are actively searching for your type of business right now. And so those are the key points that I was hoping to address. Thank you all for hanging on for as long as you have. I'm really glad for you to be here. With that, I'd love to open up for any questions, comments, concerns, discussion, dialogue before we close out for the afternoon. All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. By the way, we will post this on our YouTube channel. We have about 300 videos now posted and growing every week. So if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so. We'll also post this on our blog. And please subscribe to our podcast called Multiply Your Success, available at iTunes, Spotify, or whichever podcast service is your favorite. Again, my name's Tom DuFore with Big Sky Franchise Team. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here in about a week.